Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Curriculum Committee of the Board for Monday, August the 12th. Welcome to the new year. Is there any public comment? Thank you. Seeing none, let's pass it over to Mrs. Grigaitis. Good to see you.
You as well. Good evening, everyone. This evening we have a very brief agenda. We have two resources that we are asking the board to consider this evening, one for chemistry and one for math. I am going to introduce Ms. Willichek and Mr. Merck to go through the issue briefs with you that are on board docs. And then finally, we do have a policy for your consideration this evening. So without further ado, Ms. Willichek, you are first to explain chemistry.
Good evening, members of the board. Welcome back. I am very excited to share with you our issue brief for our new chemistry resource. Before I go into the resource itself, I just want to remind you, this is part of our curriculum cycle. We have 4 stages to our curriculum cycle. And science is currently on cycle because the state is adopting the new STEEL standards that we went through a little bit earlier in the year. So those standards are to be implemented next school year, and then Keystone MPSSA will reflect in the assessments the following year. So we'll have field questions this year. That being said, as part of curriculum cycle, the 4 stages, the first stage is research and review, and that's the current stage that we're in for all of our science in general. We are writing science curriculum. For some, we have a staggered approach right now just for fiscal purposes. And then we will be doing implementation. That's our 3rd stage. And then our 4th stage is then going back and evaluating what we've done, if it's going well or if we need to make changes. So in terms of the research and review, part of that is the core resource for the course. And in chemistry, we haven't done this, to be honest with you, in almost 8 years. And that reason being is that we've been holding it off because we know these new standards were coming out. So as you go through the issue brief, I'm not going to read the whole entire thing verbatim, but I am going to tell you that part of what we did was we looked at a couple different structures on how we can evaluate a resource. And I'm happy to say that part of that came from some of the professional development that I received from the Pencil group, which is the group from the state of Pennsylvania for science leaders in the state. And so I feel as though we had a nice bunch of tools to look at, but one of the biggest things that we did was our training with Brett and looking at 3-dimensional science, looking at phenomena learning, and looking at the equity approaches for science. So those were some of the big 3 premises that we went about looking at a bunch of different resources. Ed Reports has a wonderful tool to help break down phenomena as well as break down 3-dimensional science. However, the recommendations that are in Ed Reports are very limited because there are not a lot of new resources that are out there that are fully aligned to these things. So knowing that, as we went through and we evaluated resources, we kept in mind for ourselves what we wanted for our look-fors, and our own individual professional development and instructional practices for our teachers are going to have to support us in whatever resources that we choose, because not many resources out there are fully aligned. That being said, we did look at 3 different resources. We looked at McGraw-Hill, we looked at Savas, and we also looked at Open SciEd. Those were the 3 that we did look at. And in looking at them, we felt that the Savas materials had really excellent approaches for storylines in science and looking at phenomena that will both be investigative phenomena and anchoring phenomena that we spoke to a little bit about last school year. What was really great about it is that going through this model and looking at the resources helped our chemistry teachers to think about how we have to write our curriculum moving forward, because these are new approaches for us that we have not used in science instruction before. And the resources that were available from Savas were also linked to Flynn Scientific, which is one of the leading scientific tools that we have in the research. We do a lot of our ordering from the high school through Flynn, and they also have a lot of different regulations and guidelines for using chemicals in the classroom. So we liked the approach and the different resources that they had. And also that one of the big things that we're looking at is claim evidence reasoning, which is also known as CER, and the approaches that they had for helping teachers and students making claims based upon evidence that they had in investigations. And the ways that teachers could manipulate the tools, because the online access to the resource also allows teachers the opportunity to change reading levels for students, change languages for students, and give different accessibilities for students. So we will be getting trained throughout the year on the resource. We actually have them coming in September for a PLT. So teachers have been doing work. They did the curriculum writing for the course already, and they're going to be implementing things in September. And then we're actually going to have them come in during PLT and get further training. But we would like to seek your approval for this particular resource, because having done our research of stage 1, we feel as though this is the most appropriate and it's going to help us best with aligning our STEEL standards for our curriculum. Are there any questions? Yeah.
So I know you said none of the resources that you looked at were fully aligned with the new curriculum.
It's true.
So what does that mean moving forward? So for example, will this chemistry resource give just like updates as they get more in line, or are they going to make us buy a whole new thing because, oh yeah, now we get it?
When I made that statement, when I was talking about the alignment in Ed Reports. Ed Reports itself is like Ed Reports is the new tool that a lot of school districts are going to see if things are fully aligned to the standards. So as far as what Ed Report criteria were, nothing was fully aligned. So that being said, that doesn't mean that it's not aligned to our state standards. It's really about how you take the resource and how you use it. These resources are not our curriculum. So I need to, we have our own curriculum. Our curriculum is based on the state standards. A lot of these resources are based on national standards. And then they have adjustments for the state standards as you work with they have curriculum teams at every state. So that being said, Ed Reports comes out with a new report almost every single year, and they'll go back to a publisher and say, hey, your book is not aligned. And then the publisher will go back and they will make changes. So the hard copy of what we have might not ever be fully aligned, but they will be making changes to the online tool that is what we give the students, that one-to-one tool, so that book will be pushed out into Canvas, and teachers can make assignments in there and actually make labs and make adjustments, and there's test banks and things like that. Oh, no. The online part, we won't be changing the hard copy, because that we have for 6 years until we go through the next curriculum cycle phase. Yeah. Other questions?
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a teacher working on the weekends,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm working on this. I had your professional development, but I still have a couple questions. Is there an 800 number? Is there online research?
There are online resources for them. We also have a specific rep that works directly with us. And if they don't get a question from the online help desk, they can go to the rep. And they also have me. So I'm happy to help them and work through that with them as well. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sorry. The microphone's okay. Quick question just around, I appreciate that there's the online resource access for students at home. Families can engage, supplemental materials, et cetera. Curious around language access to online materials at home.
Mm-hmm. There are other languages that you are able to make this available in. So like we can get the book fully. It's the main languages though. You'll see Spanish, and you'll see they are working on a tool that works with Google Translate so that it can interact with multiple languages. But as of right now, my understanding, and then that was from June, my understanding is that it's Spanish. It is, I want to say Mandarin. And I think that might be the only two as of right now. But they're working on developing that further. And I think a lot of the tools with AI that are coming out allow that feature too. But that's, how quickly that's developing. So it's not fully there yet.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much. And if you do have further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You'll be hearing more from me over the course of the year, because our next resource that we have to approve is biology. But quite honestly, they haven't released any new resources in the past couple of years that are aligned to the STEELs. And I'm told that this fall there should be several for us to start looking at. So thank you. Okay. Mr. Merck.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you had a great summer. A little quick for us. All right. So we have an issue brief for a math textbook for grades 4 and 5. During the past school year, grades 4 and 5 were in stages 1 and 2 of the curriculum cycle. Part of that stage, just as Maria indicated, is to explore resources and determine those that best align to the PA standards, exemplify the pedagogy of our math department, and vertically align to Colonial School District's K-12 math curriculum. Just to give you some background, grades 4 and 5, the math courses utilize the same resources at K-3. However, over the past couple of years, the teachers had to supplement materials, often just to meet our standards, to offer differentiation, and to engage students in higher level questioning and discourse. During the curriculum cycle, the grades 4 and 5 math teachers identified the need for a new core resource. One, to ensure cohesion between the two grades and the teachers, have fidelity within the curriculum, and to address the needs of all learners. So, using our own exploration, our own criteria and rubric, and combining that with what we see through ed reports, the teachers have identified illustrative math by Kendall Hunt. There's a number of illustrative math is an open educational resource, and then publishers will adopt it and kind of make it more user-friendly for teachers, students, and families. So Kendall Hunt is the publisher that we chose. All the math teachers in the two grades previewed the resource. We had several teachers pilot the resource in both grade levels last year. And we even did a site visit to another school district that utilized the resource that uses it as its core resource, where the teachers had the opportunity to ask questions, visit classrooms, talk with students, and really get a feel for how another district uses it while we were also piloting ourselves. So it was nice that we had questions in mind already going in there. And then just watching them do some things that, we didn't quite get to yet, they were able to get additional questions answered. This resource, it'll provide a stronger alignment to our standards. It'll give us some more differentiation strategies for our students. It will create curriculum fidelity. It'll increase our vertical articulation within the math department. And the reason I say it'll increase because our K-3s use investigations, which, just by its name is exploring math concepts and understandings. Illustrative math will also bring that into the classrooms as well. From 4 to 5, students will go on to CMS, to Colonial Middle School, where they are using connected math concepts. That is also an exploration resource. CMS is going to be in the curriculum cycle just like grades 4 and 5 soon, and they've been looking at resources that will kind of bridge off of illustrative math, or it could even be illustrative math. So it's, we're bringing everything together so that when students are in K-3, then move 4 to 5, then go to 6 to 8, it's a natural progression within our curriculum and within the pedagogy that's within the resources. We're looking for a one-time purchase for teacher guides, the resource masters, and manipulative kits. That should last a long time. Everything that the teachers are receiving in print is also available virtually. And we're making sure to include the special education teachers within the training and using the resources within their classes. And grade 4 will implement it first this coming school year, following the training after next week. And then after grade 4 uses it this school year, grade 5 will use it in 25-26. So this way the students come into grade 5 will have already experienced. So it's natural, it's grade 5 doesn't have to start all over like grade 4 is. So it's just one grade. Any questions? Yes.
Sorry, so they're going to get training next week,
Mm-hmm.
the teachers.
Yes.
So are we looking at a whole change in how they present the material to the 4th grade students, and how far? Let me go back a little bit. When my kids were young, there was a big switch in the math program, and it was, for a while, the teachers were like only a day ahead of where the kids were going to be. And that was really rough when they were in high school, because like the teachers they had no idea how far they were going to get. So and as the teachers were kind of acclimating it as parents, we were trying to acclimate to it as well. So it was a little frustrating. So this transition, will they is it a more natural of a progression than the one that we had many years ago? That was like a totally like different way of doing it.
The students and teachers will both be familiar with the strategies and the concepts because our standards have dictate certain things that our teachers have been and the students have been accustomed to, and we've been building our curriculum from that. And this resource aligns very well with the standards. Some other additional comments I made here were that with what the standards have been requiring, we've already had resources the teachers created and supplemented themselves. Our assessments have been aligned to already. So all that's already in play. So it's just now it's okay, let's align it. Let's use it within this resource.
Okay.
And besides aligning to the standards and already kind of fulfilling what we like, it brings everybody together under one umbrella so that everybody's using this, following the same scope and sequence with fidelity. And there was one other thing I wanted to say that you reminded me. No, your question reminded me of it and I kind of slipped my mind. It'll come back to me. Yeah.
I have two quick questions.
Mm-hmm.
One is, what is it about the Kendall Hunt version that or publishing that stood out versus others? Like, is there anything that it offers that's different or above and beyond that is just helpful for us to know? That's one, and then I'll ask the other one.
The materials provided our teachers more autonomy. All the materials are virtual. They're editable, and we can, you develop them in a way so that we can make it more appropriate for our classes. Other publishers, you were not allowed to edit anything. Mm-hmm. You had to follow what they had, word by word. This is making it it's more adaptable.
Okay.
To how we would like to express the content.
All right, thank you. And then the follow-up question is, very often these days, adopting a new curriculum usually has coaching that goes along with it. Mm-hmm. That might, in addition to the professional learning and the professional development for teachers and staff. Is that an option? Is it something that we're interested in? Is it, I'm just curious where we are with that.
So it's something we're going to explore as we begin it. Because we did take that into consideration, but we had 3 teachers piloted it last year, so they're very familiar with it. I'm familiar with the program. We're going to utilize our PLTs to review and look at, okay, where are our needs and what other trainings do we need? And that'll be an ongoing assessment throughout the year. Teachers have had an opportunity to explore this resource intensely last year, looking at the materials, looking at the lesson plans, and the scope and sequence. I know what I was going to tell you. So we've already built our curriculum with, kind of having this resource in mind. And, with your approval, that's when we'll be able to say, okay, click the switch. We're going to use it. So
great. And I lied. I have one more question. What kind of communication in particular for our 4th grade families has gone out or will go out to help them understand that there's the shift coming or new resources? Like if I have a 6th grader, and someone who's going into 4th, I'm like, oh, I know this. I've been here. I've done this. And now, it's something new. So what have we communicated so far? What's our plan there?
So nothing has been communicated, but we'll be sure to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Does changing the resource and the curriculum in this stage have any impact on homework assignments and all of our expectations for the kids in that way? Since it's an interactive textbook, are they changing how they're expecting the kids to be able to interact with it?
So this resource is not going to be interactive for students. It's still going to be more. Teachers will post things on Google Classroom like we have in the past, but the work that the students do will be in terms of from the resource will be more traditional. We'll still have access to IXL where we'll collect data through the application, but no, you'll still see the homework come home as it has before. You're welcome. Thank you. If you have any other questions, let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Wilczek and Mr. Merck. The final thing we have on our agenda this evening is a policy for review of 321. This is a policy entitled Political Activities. It is a new number, a new title, and new language. This would replace our current policy 521. We are using PSBA's policy recommendation. Policy 521 was adopted in 1994. So it is time to update. And 321 basically states that the board does recognize and encourage the rights of administrative, professional, and classified employees as citizens to engage in political activity. However, district time, resources, property, or equipment paid for by taxpayers may not be used for political purposes. I'm sorry? So this is a policy for our staff here. No? Mm-hmm. Next week.
We wanted to have it publicly on the radar as discussion, because obviously there are some very strong feelings about the upcoming elections on one side or the other. Matters not to us. You know, we are neutral and we focus on content. But we wanted the board to talk about it again on the 22nd, and then talk about it in September for the second read. So we can absolutely look at that, Chris, and make adjustments.
So will that discussion, is that appropriate to have it during the actual board meeting, or is it like the concerns?
A board meeting.
Okay.
It won't be the first, hopefully first read will be, we want to talk about it tonight, get input from the board, which you just provided, have first read on the 22nd, have second read in September. So we are 2 months ahead of the election.
Okay. So I guess just going with that. So with our government class and any kind of special assignments they might have, I just want to kind of make sure that any conflicts that might arise in that the communication is clear in the policy. I know we do procedures. I know we have our handbook. I just want to make sure that moving forward that we don't have those conflicts again that, you know, can become very public.
So I spoke with, I already met with CEA leadership, and every principal's opening faculty meeting, this policy will be discussed with specifics. And so that everybody understands that our approach would be to teach the history and to teach, we have a government course, and we also address civic responsibility and voting in all of our courses. But anytime we present, content related to that, at a minimum, we would present both sides or three sides for all the different types of candidates that have run. What's the history of voting? And so I'm confident that everybody will understand.
Okay, that's
and
fine.
I'm glad you brought it up. And so that's why we wanted to talk about it tonight, because while it's not necessarily solely a curriculum issue, that's where it comes up, because we have a vulnerable population, and each family will vote the way they want to vote. And it's our job to teach the importance of voting, the civic responsibility, and also the history and the governmental process that's involved.
Right.
And I think our teachers, for the most part, do an excellent job doing that. We've had, like any district, we've had a couple glitches over the years, but nothing that has not been addressed.
So real quick, Mike, to just elaborate on that a little bit. Since this policy isn't officially being passed, we're hoping it will be passed, in September?
September.
Will it need to be revisited with teachers again once it's, how will that work?
Great question. I'm sorry to interrupt you. So in its current state, it will be addressed, as well as the fact that it's undergoing review and revisions. And then at an ensuing faculty meeting in October, if there's further edits and additions, it'll be reviewed again with all faculty. So, and not just faculty, all staff too. So it's a different world. Like, people get information 24/7. Our job is, while we're teaching and while we are in our instructional day, we focus on the content and focus on being neutral and presenting all sides. So absolutely will be, if there's substantive edits that are made in September and then it's approved in October, we'll have follow-up faculty meetings.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, Mike. Can you, under the exceptions, which is, I think, sort of what Chris was talking about, it does say under the exceptions, discussion and study of politics in the classroom. On the second one, where it says conduct of student elections and connected campaigning, I think I know what it means, but can you explain that a little bit more, clarify what that means?
Sure. So when they conduct student elections, or sometimes a class will have mock elections, and talk about the process. We have a teacher who did a great job explaining the Electoral College, for example, and he had two students be the two candidates during the last election, and he was emphasizing the how many times the politicians visited certain states versus other states. Because, for example, Vermont has very few electoral votes, but California has many. And so they were tracking, it was a great lesson, tracking with push pins on a map how many times a candidate visited. And then he had the students, he gave them each a bag of M&Ms. And all the students in the class had a stick with the state carved out on it and how many electoral votes there were. And they had to go out and distribute, essentially like persuading people to vote for him. So they were giving all their M&Ms to Texas, Pennsylvania, California, and Maine and Vermont. I got Maine. I was really disappointed because I got like two. And then he showed a map of where the candidates actually went over a 3-month period. It was and it impacted the kids to understand how the college works and how campaigning works. And nobody took a side. So when we talk about conducting student elections or mock elections, they're exempt from this. And I think our teachers, Bob Slagle retired, but if you walked in his classroom, you would see, you never knew who Bob was advocating for, because you would see candidates from the Green Party, you would see candidates from Democrat, Republican, and he would have them make presentations and teaching the process of the election. So that's sorry for the long-winded answer, but that's the approach.
No, that was helpful because that wasn't my interpretation. So thank you. I
Sure.
appreciate it.
So quick question. So you said this is from PSBA. So this is verbatim, sort of, sorry, Beth, I'm back this to the policy.
It's a recommendation from PSBA. If you go into board docs, and I can send it out to the board, at the bottom, there's a cross-reference that gives the rationale and the any statutes that are applicable, and it gives the background on it.
Okay, because I'm just curious if there's additional context. So that would be helpful, because they, may not be used for political purposes. And I think if you probably ask a dozen people how they would define political purposes, they would be remotely, probably similar, but not necessarily identical. And so there, you can't say, well, this is what is political, and there's some exceptions here, right? And so
Sure.
The flip side of this is that there would be some gray space and interpretation to what may be political. My one other question is, outside of those instances where the courses are specifically, the curriculum around those courses are specifically to address the political environment, and you mentioned that this policy hasn't been updated in so long, right? The world is different. The world is continuing to evolve quite rapidly. I don't need to tell you that. Dr. Christian. But so the question is, outside of those few courses, how does the political conversation occur? I understand it'll be discouraged, but that doesn't mean it won't occur. And so what is the instruction for staff of how to address when conversations may come up? And they're related, right? There's a lot of areas where if we looked at the curriculum that you could make an argument about math. They're talking about electoral college and they're talking about logic and reasoning and debate. And I want to do a paper and I have some leeway. And so how are staff directed? And I apologize for the long question, but to sort of, are they instructed to sort of try to encourage students not to have any debate or back and forth, or if there is a hand that comes up or a paper or a topic or a debate, how exactly will staff handle that?
Great question. So our goal is to give each of the principals, and it will be developmentally age appropriate, a script and key talking points to share with the staff on how to handle questions, which it's not just elections, it's any current event that comes up. And so number one, the initial response, depending upon the class, is, all right, I hear your question. We need to focus on the content of the class today. If it persists, we will make sure that our staff has key talking points to say, certainly appreciate any student opinion. We're not going to get into a huge discourse or debate about this. We're going to focus on what our content is for the day. We address Mrs. Grigaitis. I gave it to the board earlier this summer. Mrs. Grigaitis outlined multiple times throughout the elementary, middle school, and high school years where we address the right to vote, the important civic responsibility, those types of things. Keep it on that macro global perspective and not get into the weeds. When you have 440 teachers and another 300 staff members and add 5,600 kids, conversations happen. So it's certainly, we're not going to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, but we'll make sure that we have, and I talked to Jill Forrester from CEA and talked to all of our association leaders, what our position is, from that 7:30 time frame to about 4:00 when our elementary kids, 3:45 when the kids get out. We're Switzerland. We focus on the content and we focus on that, and we will address any issues that may pop up. But clearly, because of recent events and just the amount of noise that's out there on so many different, across so many different mediums, will we have challenges? Absolutely. Will we address them to the best of our abilities? Absolutely.
Appreciate that. One quick follow-up. Has PCBA or any other organization recommended anything along the lines of assemblies or something along those lines? Because, I would vote, speaking of elections, that part of what's really critically important in today's environment and probably for the rest of the time is the normalization of incivility. And so if that percolates and then the response is that we're not going to talk about politics in this class, I don't think that that's the right answer in that setting when somebody's being lacks respect in a debate. And we've had this conversation very briefly. And the other piece is, and again, it's not a civics course, but around the fact that there are facts and there is information to follow. So the civility and that there are facts in terms of misinformation, I think is critically important, even in Switzerland. And so the question would be, are there any schools or districts that sort of take an approach to, we're going to get everybody in this room together and we're going to talk about a couple of high level things, or is that just asking for trouble?
I've seen it in districts, and I've seen some very talented teachers conduct forums like that. My hope is that if we do that we have good planning and communication long before the event takes place. And I've seen it work very successfully. And I believe we have some very talented social studies teachers that could do that? Absolutely. But we need to make sure we communicate to families. Here's the purpose of the exercise. Here's the purpose of the lesson. And this is what we're going to be doing. Just like we do for any other topic that we may have that could be sensitive in nature.
I appreciate the thoughtful response.
For the families, I know that we said that this particular policy is for employees. I have two questions. So is there a policy that addresses the community, whether it's the families and the students? And if so, is that part of the code of conduct so that parents and families understand as well? Because I feel like the teachers and staff will be equipped, but I think that the knowledge and the information about the policy and what the expectations are from a community perspective also need to be clear directly with them, with the addition of the teachers and the staff being equipped on how to address certain conversations.
Excellent question. The measuring stick and the parameters for student speech is not as restrictive as it is for our faculty. And so the rule of thumb for our students who may have strong opinions for one side or another or any topic is it a disruption to the educational atmosphere in the class? So, you know, for an extreme example, you're in a biology class and somebody's disrupting it with a particular political opinion that is not connected to DNA and whatever else they're studying in biology. That's a disruption to the class. But opinions, whether they prefer one candidate or another, students have more latitude as long as it's not disruptive to the educational environment. As long as Chris's opinions are not interrupting my opinions in math class, you know, even if I don't agree with her opinions, you know, we continue with that. And then family is the same way. Is it disruptive to the educational campus? Is it disruptive to the educational atmosphere? You know, we will address it. In one of my former settings, I had a parent come on campus during a board meeting, and we were very nice board meeting, a lot of student recognition, and the entire time spent time blanketing cars with political flyers and those types of things. Simply not appropriate on the campus. And we went out and addressed it. He disagreed. We moved on. So when it gets to the point where it's a disruption, that's when we can step in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So, with the actual policy, when we talk about it in the board meeting, if we kind of have ideas of how we might want added wording to the policy, where do we go with that? Do we ask Fox Rothschild to do it, or do we have to come up with it, or do they just need to know the intent behind why we're asking?
Great question. So what we're going to do from this, since this is a starting point,
Right.
and our goal is to have it a second read at the latest October, we would prefer September, is that we'll give you what PSBA recommends. I certainly can. PSBA will also give us what other school districts have in existence in their policies. And then we certainly can ask Fox to weigh in. And then we'll give the board a little bit of homework between now and next week. And then between August and September to make any changes, because you can make changes from first read to second read.
Yeah.
So we have a good 30 to 45 days to develop a sound policy. My only recommendation would be to keep it broad. Yeah. Thank you. Good word. And it's about the intent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll gather all of that. And the nice part about being part of the PSBA policy network is that we have access to every other districts that are members, and it's about 300 districts, so we can get sample policies. So congratulations. School didn't start, but you got your first homework assignment.
All 300 of them, huh?
No, we'll get you about a dozen.
Couple questions.
Thank you.
Would theoretically, where it says you can't use district resources, would students and their time be considered a district resource at that point? Would that making it covered? Like back to Chris's original question.
I don't. Students and their time as a resource.
So it says you can't use district resources, and it doesn't specifically say forcing students to participate in a political.
Oh, I got you.
Could that be?
It's interesting. I didn't think of that. I guess you could make that argument. I see it more as using like the district, like email and stuff like that. But
he did use the.
It is a district source. It is part of the district. So, that's a good point.
So, political speech in the form of a shirt of your preferred candidate. If it meets the dress code, that's not particularly covered in this, as near as I can read it.
Correct.
And then, along those same lines, technically, CEA belongs to a political organization with a political action committee.
Correct.
And theoretically want to have a carve out so they can wear their CEA shirts.
They can wear CEA, absolutely. There were, a couple of years ago, it was again in another setting. I had an employee who had a magnet behind the desk on the whiteboard that had not just the name of the association, but it had the reasons to vote for a certain person, and that we asked them to take down. And so it was really small, but it was there, and somebody noticed it, and I didn't notice it. I probably have walked in that room a dozen times, and it's more about the message and the message within it.
And then the last part of this, how would this affect politicians and candidates for office? I'm running for school board and I want a chance to talk to a classroom or show up that thing. Would that be covered by this policy? Like, would it be like, hey, I have to have equal resources as my opponent? Like, is any of that covered where it's all banned, or the governor can show up whenever he wants?
Great question, and a lot of gray area there. My practice and our practice has been, if we get contacted by a local politician, we prefer to invite all politicians to the event. And so we've had it in our government classes. We've had Republicans and Democrats come into the class and answer questions from the kids. And that's really been about the election process and the campaigning process. It's really good. And the candidates are great. Like, they're not, obviously they're on opposite sides, but they're very respectful in explaining the process, because I think 98% of people are generally very respectful and get that. When we have special events, such as like Read Across America or something like that, we try to send invites out to everybody, local police, local supervisors, everything, and try to invite everybody. The biggest challenge we have is when we get like last minute requests and we're not able to get in touch with everybody, and then we have to sort of have that awkward conversation. So it's happened once or twice, but we've worked our way through it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will tell you this, like, was it last year, Karen, 2 years ago, we had the governor call and we got very short notice. It was awesome. It was about the free breakfast program. And I got a couple emails after it, like, and I messed up. I did not send the communication out that the governor was coming to distribute free breakfast. And it wouldn't have mattered what the political affiliation was, because it was all about breakfast. And we were handing out granola bars and Pop-Tarts and all the stuff. And I actually had to fire him because he was taking too long and the kids were getting late to class, and we were having a great time. And the next day I got like, what are you doing? Did you do this on purpose? Like, I'm like, he was handing out granola bars, like, and there was no proselytizing. There was no political activity. It was about, like, let's keep this in the budget. And how do you not agree with that? Like, it fed 200 kids that day, and that was a good thing. So,
should have gone over to tech school where they don't get free breakfast.
I know. One problem at a time. Oh, did he? I find as a gov, I gotta replace you. Like, the kids are late to class. It's time to go. We had Governor Wolf. I think it was my first year here, second year here. He came to talk about the changes in the PSSA, and there was no political affect. It was about shortening the PSSA, moving it later in the year so that it would be a more accurate assessment of student progress. And it was apolitical, in my opinion. And to Governor Wolf's credit, I joked with him when he walked in the middle school. I said, Governor, we have an emergency. And the two biggest state troopers I ever saw in my life grabbed me and they're like, what do you mean emergency? I said, we're short a lunchroom aide. I need the gov to help with lunch duty. And he didn't miss a beat. He walked right in and saw all the kids, and he was 10 minutes late to the press conference because he was doing lunch duty. So, and there's nothing political about that. That's just being good with kids. So we'll get samples out to the board, and this could take several iterations. I think it would be a good goal to have it settled by the end of September. So we have ample time to make sure we impress upon staff the importance of it.
So just to clarify, if any board members have comments, they can reach out to you or things and give you their feedback
Absolutely.
between now and even next week.
We'll get the samples out this week.
Okay.
And give it to the board, and then ask for feedback directly to me. And I'll make sure that Jess Lester's copied on it, and then Rosemary as well. And then we'll put together a draft, and then we should have a very open and candid dialogue at the August board meeting, and then again September board meeting.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly.
That's all we have, Ms. Marino.
All right. Thank you for that. Any public comment? Thank you. That being said, the meeting will close out the meeting.
I told Mark we wouldn't be long, so that's why he let us go first. I just apologized to Mark.
Would be against tradition if I didn't go last. Okay. All good.
All right. I'd like to call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Any public comments on tonight's agenda? All right. Seeing none, pass over to Mr. G.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight to the first Finance Committee meeting of the 24-25 school year. We have 4 things on the agenda, 2 discussion items and 2 informational items. The first 2 discussion items, one of them being the Chromebooks that we intend to hand out to the students for the 24-25 school year. If the committee members are familiar, and some of them might not be just because they're newer, the school district hands out a 1-to-1 device to all students throughout the entire school district. These new devices are purchased brand new and handed out to the 2nd graders, 5th grade, and 9th grade. The district does invest a sizable amount of money into each one of these items. The one for the 5th and 9th grade is of 14 inches large, while the one for the elementary kids are on the smaller version, just because obviously they're smaller and we want to be mindful of the weight that these students have to carry. Having said that, the average cost for a Chromebook ranges anywhere from $440 for the secondary unit to $420 for the units for the 2nd graders. Attached to this presentation is also the repair cost that the school district would incur or a student may incur if they do not opt into these insurance program. And you can see that the investment for some of these repairs, from keyboard to the touchpads to the screens and the USB port, is pretty sizable. We did shop this around to many vendors throughout the area, but as you may know from your cell phones, it's a very small market to find somebody that willing to repair these Chromebooks. So at this time, the administration is looking to just educate the committee on the program for the student Chromebook insurance. Right now, it is $30 for students, and from working with our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer, Dr. Melissa Figueroa Douglas, we feel it's appropriate to offer this program for $15 for students who are experiencing hardships, financial difficulty, or also for those that are indicated on our free and reduced meal programs in connection with our food service. Again, this program is completely optional. There is no requirement for a family or a student to enroll in this. However, just like your own car insurance, your own health insurance, if you don't have your insurance and you need to get it repaired, then you run that risk of paying that full premium. So what we would do is that we would educate the families and the students and say, yes, while we understand it is a $30 or $15 commitment you are making, you are mitigating the fact of a potential $440 full unit replacement, or something as high or something as more commonplace, such as a replacement screen. We have invested in very robust, strong Chromebook cases. They kind of look like those otter boxes you see in your cell phone. So again, if a Chromebook is damaged in a sense where the screen is broken and the otter box is on there, that tells us, it was either not taken care of properly or it fell out of the box. But again, this $30 or $15 investment in the insurance program helps mitigate any future charges. Now, it would be limited to a certain number of instances, because obviously 1 cracked screen we can understand, 2 cracked screen we may need to look into what actually happened. By the 3rd time it gets habitual, the insurance program would not cover excessive, numerous, instances of repairs. Like I said, while the district is willing to invest in the repairs and cover that difference between the $30 insurance premium and the cost itself, it'll be something that we'll evaluate. And this program would be offered every year to the students, just like it would be your car insurance, your health insurance. It would just be a rolling program. And then it would also help us also administer it a lot more effectively by having it offered one time a year. And again, we will stress that this is purely optional. It is not a requirement. You will get the Chromebook. You will get the charger. You will get the case. You will get the entire package just like every other student in the district. However, the option is to enroll in this program or not and to help mitigate any future costs for damages. Just like we would when we give a student a textbook, they're responsible for the textbook. We expect to get that textbook back. If that textbook is neither not returned to us or returned to us in a damaged situation where we cannot repair it or it's not acceptable anymore, it becomes a financial obligation that then needs to be satisfied through before they graduate. So again, this is very much akin to the treatment of how we deal with our textbooks or any other property we give our students. Just wanted to get this in front of the committee. If there's any questions, any feedback, again, this is a discussion. A point of discussion. I wanted to bring this out to the committee tonight.
I had a quick question on the, so just so I'm clear, so this option is available to all families, not just those that are receiving new devices, 2nd, 5th, and 9th graders?
All families, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, if I'm not hearing any questions, we will make sure that we draft the appropriate letter to families. It will go out. The Chromebook insurance opt-in form will go out the day that the families and students receive the Chromebooks, the chargers, and the cases. It will be a package. It will be communicated also and available to pay on My School Bucks with a credit card, should families need to pay with a credit card. And then we'll administer the program from there.
I do have one question. Sorry. If when they get that choice to do it, is there a box they check for when they opt out of getting that insurance? Or
there is not an opt out; it's an opt in only.
Opt in only. Okay.
You opt in by completing it. It's a signed form that you acknowledge that you received all the items, and then there's a box that checks that I'm enrolling in the program. Gotcha. Here is my check, cash, and then everything will be administered in a database. So if credit card payments are captured, it'll record that way.
I'm sorry, Mark, one more question, just as more clarity. Did you say that the discount is only for those that are on the reduced lunch?
As it stands right now, students that are identified on the free and reduced meal program will automatically be tagged for the option of the $15. If there are additional families that a principal would know maybe additional hardships or financial situations, we will communicate to the principals that if they have the resources within their budget, they can help cover the cost of insurance for that child should they know of an additional hardship or, extreme difficulty. Principals are obviously, the boots on the ground, and they're going to know more about situations with families than I would. I would then work with the principals to make sure the money is, allocated to cover for that student.
If the board remembers, we identified additional families that were just beyond the threshold for free and reduced lunch to make sure we could provide lunch for those students. And so we had about 100 additional students identified. So we already have a working list, and Mark's correct. The principals do know the families in need, and some of our teachers do too, and Megan Raddick as well, our home and school visitor. So, we talked about this, and this is all about communication. The hundreds of thousands of dollars in repairs is just not sustainable. So hopefully through this insurance program, it'll mitigate that. And the biggest challenge has been the middle school. Fifth through 8th grade has been the biggest driver to this for cost. And we just, we want folks to have, and students to understand the responsibility of a textbook or a Chromebook, whatever it is, and there's a cost to it. And so this puts some skin in the game, and hopefully folks take advantage of it. We'll make sure that we communicate it many times. We didn't want the board to be caught unaware. We've visited a couple school districts where they have high school classes dedicated to repairing devices. So we may come back in the fall and talk about that, because Perkiomen Valley does a wonderful job with it. So, but we didn't want to just have a class that does that. We wanted to also have a backup with the insurance. There's even if you do it in-house, there's a cost to it.
Right.
So,
Can you remind us about, like, from a warranty perspective? So there's, like you mentioned, like we have our personal devices. So if I have a warranty on my device, whatever the manufacturer warranty is, then the insurance doesn't kick in because it's covered under the warranty. What are the warranties on these Chromebooks?
They're about a year. They're a year, right, Mark?
Yeah, it's a year. It's a 1-year warranty. It costs us about $90 per unit for this next round of all the Chromebooks we're purchasing. Now, obviously, if the warranty covers a defect, then there's no charge to the family, right? If a port or one of the maybe more wear and tear things happens, the student is not charged for it, obviously, whether or not they have insurance or not. So just to recap, though, if it's a defect and covered by the warranty, then obviously the manufacturer will take care of that. And
It's
then
the
we
cracked
also
screens. That's where we're getting hammered on.
We did poll as many neighboring school districts as within Montgomery County, and of the 12 responses we got, all 12 of them offer this program annually. 8 out of the 12, so obviously 2/3 charge $30. The other balance is charged outside of $30, and then it's a mixed bag of whether or not they have an in-house program like Dr. Christian alluded to at Perkiomen Valley, or if they ship it out to another third-party vendor. Just because of the sheer volume of it, most districts go to another third-party vendor where they just have a whole team of people looking to fix it. We do have 2 technicians that are trained, and they did go through the ACER repairment program. Mr. Bogley, our director of technology, put them through this year. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, these techs, they dedicate their time to replace the screens, keyboards, all that nature. So between the warranty, our in-house program, and the more robust Chromebooks, we think that we're pretty well protected, as well as the students themselves protecting it with the more robust covers.
Quick question, Mark. Since it's opt-in, is there a deadline? In other words, if somebody's having a hardship or, they have 3 kids and, September's not a good time, and then obviously then you have that lapse, is there a way that we can support those families?
We'll work with them. Yeah, absolutely.
But they would have to speak up and...
They would need to, communicate either myself or communicate with the principal and then get them in contact with me. But we can make necessary accommodations if needed. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be great to sort of identify those families who are... Right.
We could give them.
They know, right? So if some of these kids, there are families that may have trouble paying, right? And as a proxy, the free and reduced, and then those plus, and you don't get an insurance form back, right? Maybe that represents a hardship, and maybe we can consider those folks not having to pay the $15, and the district come up with that $15 somewhere else, because in the end.
And that's when we work with
it'd be beneficial. Yeah. Right.
But there'll be a 30-day period to get that opt-in form, and then we can extend a grace period to anybody that communicates to us that we'd like to opt into it. However, we're having trouble right now. We'll work with them on extending a deadline for payments. Yes.
Is that part of the request? Like, so if someone says, I want to opt in, but I can't afford it, like, can that be an option so that they don't have to take another step?
Yeah, we can put some instruction there to say, please communicate with the business office should you have additional questions about payments, something like that.
I think in the letter too, we're going to communicate like not all examples, but some of the key ones, like a cracked screen costs this much normally to replace, so that people see, wait a second, $30. This is great, because a cracked screen is close to 100, or when you talk about parts and labor.
That'll be part of the education. And the information will all be on the website. It'll be in the handouts on day one. And then I know a lot of principals have committed time to some of their back to school nights to go over this program. So
just confirming that $30 is an annual charge, not a.
This would be an annual charge, or an annual option to enroll.
And I know that I tend to ask this question quite often, but I'm just imagining, like, if I don't speak English and I'm coming and it's usually an English guide. I just want to make sure we have paper copies in home languages. I know over the website it gets at home in home languages. I just know that it can be very intimidating if I don't speak English. It's like, hey, here's your new Chromebook. Awesome. Sign. Great. Sign here. And then you're like, what did I just sign? right? So I just have a sensitivity to that, and I just want to make sure that we continue to think about that in that space.
Yeah, I can make sure to work with Jess Lester to develop communication.
Thank you.
And today we had, during our admin workshop, we met with two PhD professors from Temple, and that was working with our families of our ELLs was a topic we talked about for an hour and a half, and talking about all the different forms we send home, the different communications, and how we can provide access. That was one of the many topics we talked about. So we can, and Jess is on board with that, and obviously the principals are as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry, I just want to one more time reiterate for those that may not be able to afford it, in terms of just the communication, that there is help potentially for them, because if someone can't afford it, and the option is they're opting in so they don't have to do it, and they're looking at it from a perspective of, I can pay this $30 or I can go buy food for my family. They're going to buy food for their family, and they can live with they can live with a cracked screen, because if they have a personal device, the likelihood is that that's what they're doing. Like, I've seen it many times. So I just want to make sure that we are effectively and efficiently communicating the options for people that may not be able to afford the insurance.
Right, because then the question becomes, do we pay for the insurance to prevent the cracked screen, right, for those families? And so that's where the opt-in really becomes a challenge. And if you present even the price of a screen and the price of a keyboard as an FAQ, one of the FAQs could be, what if I can't afford the insurance at this time, or something along those lines? Like I think we're saying the same thing, in that all you can do to sort of really outreach around the insurance, one, to support the families, two, financially it supports the district. If you say, okay, the district is going to take on this $15 for these 300 families, you probably still save money. Okay.
And we're not going to let, if there is whatever the issue is, if it's financial, if it's an accident, whatever, we're not going to let it disrupt education. So just like we wouldn't in a lunchroom, we're not going to deprive a student of lunch. It's critical. If they need to act, they don't use their Chromebooks every day, but they use them many days. So we won't let it interrupt education or instruction.
I have one question too. We've been talking about Chromebooks, but does this cover the students who have speech devices as well?
This will cover any one-to-one device or any type of electronic, component that a student does use. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So potentially I could have, as a parent, I could have a student who has a communication device and a laptop.
It'll be one fee for
both,
all the devices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And we're not seeing.
Yeah, we're not seeing any. We're very, very limited. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for your attention to that. Next is an item that Dr. Christian and myself have been talking about for the last couple months, and I finally wanted to get some wheels on it. We did have a chance to speak with the fire chiefs in Conshohocken Borough, Plymouth Township, White Marsh Township, and the attachment goes over Act 91, which was formerly Act 172. Essentially, we are discussing the volunteer firefighter and EMS personnel tax credit. You can see from the summary that the purpose of the Act 172 of 2016 was to allow municipalities to provide a tax credit for an active volunteer's tax liability. This would essentially incentivize them to get involved in their local firehouse or EMS organization. In 2020, school districts were then added, and they had the ability, or have the ability now, to provide a local earned income tax as municipalities under Act 172. Long story short, they amended the municipality law of 172 and allowed school districts to now opt into it. The school district program that we are discussing tonight obviously would extend to active volunteer firefighter, fire police, and EMS personnel, emphasizing on the volunteer portion of this. The volunteer must be a member of the fire company or like mutual aid organization for at least 1 year. The volunteer must have responded to at least 25% of the company's calls and training activities during the previous year. This would be attested to by the fire chief and maybe his assistant, but somebody would make sure that they would do the due diligence to confirm to us that yes, this person was active on calls, was active in the firehouse or EMS organization. And then obviously the volunteer must be a member of a department within the Conshohocken Borough, Plymouth Township, and White Marsh Township. These are the broad strokes or the outlines of the program. This is something that was not budgeted for because due to the budget timeline last year, we didn't have the education from the fire chiefs and the discussions in between the time the budget was passed and that. But this is something that we wanted to bring to the committee's level. As you can see, the financial impact on rough estimates for Conshohocken Borough, the fire chief reported approximately 17 people, Plymouth Township 45, and White Marsh Township 48. Now, assuming every one of those individuals reached the 25% requirement, the credit we would be proposing is $500 and a maximum estimated financial exposure here of $55,000. We are not budgeted for this $55,000. This would be a addendum or a revision, or something that we would just have to work within the school district budget. The $500 is a dollar value that was taken from similar school districts in Montgomery County that also offer this program. Now, there are only two other districts to date. One is Wissahickon and one is Lower Merion. Lower Merion offers a program of $1,500 per individual, and Wissahickon offers $500. For the purposes of this presentation, I put together $500 because this is the first year of the program, and I thought it'd be maybe prudent to start at this level, and then in future budgets, we could see to how we wanted to change it. But right now, with the committee's approval, with the committee's any questions, one of the resolutions we would then propose for a future board meeting would be for this program. So the two questions on the table are, is this something the committee would like us to enact this year, 24-25, being an unbudgeted expenditure? And if so, at what dollar value per credit? And then obviously, if not, if we kick it to the following year, that'll roll up into next year's budget. So questions, comments?
Yes, I have a question. So because we can opt in to do this. We don't have to do it, correct?
No, right now it is not a current program that we offer right now.
So once we opt in, or is it required to continue forever, or can we opt out at any point?
We could opt out at a point. It would just require a board resolution to opt out.
Okay. I'm only asking that question just so everyone understands why I'm asking that question, is because if it does incentivize, I don't know that $500 credit will, but if it does and our numbers double or triple, that's a huge dent in the budget versus what we're dealing with right now. So that was why I was asking the question.
And we would expect too that if we offer this program, that the numbers would increase. There'd be greater participation in these programs. Obviously, if it goes the other way or it doesn't have an impact, that's something that we could look at too. But you're absolutely right, Gail. If the numbers balloon and they go to 200 and the line item doubles to 110,000, that would be something we would have to look at as we progress each year. But yeah, to your point, yes, we could discontinue it. We could change the dollar amount. But again, it would just have to be through board resolution each year. And I could even make it a point every year to call out this program to say, do we want to continue? Do we not want to continue?
You may not know this, but are they that short-staffed? Like, it may not be possible that they could 3 or 4x this amount because they're probably not.
I don't want to speak for the Chiefs. I just know that he's looking to help incentivize, participation. Obviously, I think from his standpoint, the more boots he can have on the ground, the better. Right. But he didn't give any indication that they're so short-staffed that they, are grasping for programs like this. Yeah, but again, any chance to help.
Worth revisiting each year.
Yeah, absolutely. Any volunteer program of a EMS, firefighter, fire personnel nature.
Did we cap this per household or?
Yeah, we would do one. It'd be capped at the parcel. All right. So if you have 5 individuals who all live in the same parcel, they all can't apply for that. Right. It would be capped at one parcel, or one program payment per parcel. And obviously they would have had to have satisfied their school taxes in prior years, and that would be part of our due diligence.
Do you know what rate those in Wissahickon and Lower Merion participated?
No, but I could find that out, yeah.
Curious.
Yep.
I think, just off the top of my head, I think Methacton does it too. I think Methacton is 500. I think Wissahickon, I don't know what Wissahickon is. I think Lower Merion was like 800, Mark. it was in that range.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just to clarify, it's what percentage of those that are eligible took advantage of the opportunity?
Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
Yeah. No,
if
but
a
thank
house
you for
has
that.
if a firehouse has 100 volunteers, how many of them actually were eligible and received it?
How many were eligible? How many actually took advantage of it?
Yep.
Just
Yep.
that might help for like long-term
Yeah,
projection
exposure.
ideas.
I can get more information on that, and then we can put together a draft resolution, and we can start there. Okay, great.
Wait, so I'm sorry, just to clarify, are we voting on this in the next, or you're going to give us the information?
No, we're going to get the information together, and then we'll discuss it again at another finance committee
Okay.
meeting, and then we'll put it to a board.
Thank
We
you.
talked to the chiefs and said it could come up for a vote in August or later in the fall. And they were very appreciative. They asked if they needed to attend tonight, and I said no, but if we need you to attend, we'll ask you to attend. But and it was my fault. They did come to us in May, and we talked about it. And then with June, with graduation and everything, and not having a July meeting, I dropped the ball on it. So I talked to Chief Schwartz the other day, and he was very appreciative that the board was discussing it. And I said, we have discussed it. We just haven't discussed it publicly, and we need to do that.
Okay, so that concludes the discussion parts of the agenda. The next two are more informational items. I wanted to revisit the state budget, seeing that last time we spoke about the state budget, it's still not passed and was not solidified at the governor's level. However, since then, it has passed the House, it has passed the Senate, and Governor Shapiro has voted or has signed it. And again, this is a quick summary to see where the budget overall landed in terms of education and compared to where Colonial School District landed. You can see from the attachment that the Pennsylvania State education budget in prior year was approximately $9.4 billion. This year, through appropriations and the awards, it is increased to over $10.4 billion, so a roughly $1 billion increase. Most of that relates to the adequacy supplement and the tax adequacy supplement awards. If you remember, we spoke about how the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania indicated that the fair funding or the funding of school districts in Pennsylvania was unconstitutional and unfair. They were able to work with the legislature to put forth these new type of supplements. One is called an adequacy supplement, where they looked at per pupil allocations. They looked at the median income of households. They looked at the value properties of households. And long story short, the adequacy supplement and tax supplement resulted in another $493 million for adequacy and $32 million in tax equity. There was one new additional line item that was kind of put together in the 25th hour. It, from all indications was that it was both parties reaching across the aisle to work to get this passed. And there was a new funding line item called cyber charter tuition reimbursement. Essentially, school districts, and Karen Burke can attest to this, when we have to send some of our students elect to attend a Commonwealth charter cyber school or any cyber school in Pennsylvania, school districts are now fronting that cost, and it's become quite a financial burden on school districts. The legislator, through the budgeting process, developed a formula where they allocated $100 million in what they're calling cyber charter tuition reimbursement. Essentially, every school district in Montgomery County was evaluated for their tuition cost, multiplied by 9%, and then that's how much they were awarded. So if you look at the second column on this page, you can see that cyber charter tuition for Colonial School District, we will be receiving an additional $151,934 just for our expenditures related to cyber charter tuition. It's great. We're getting the money. We did not budge that because, again, that came in the 25th hour. And again, while I appreciate the $151,000, our investment in CyberCharger is substantial, so we hope that grows going forward. But that was one of the new line items that came in that 25th hour. So how does this all affect Colonial School District? You can see in the second column or in the second box there, our prior year basic education was $4.8 million, special education was $2.2 million, and our Ready to Learn block grant was $169,000. We received no money in 2024-2025 relation to the adequacy supplement or the tax equity supplement. Again, we just happen to be a very fortunate district with a strong tax base, strong median income, strong property values, where the governor and their funding formula up in Harrisburg distribute those funds to more needy school districts throughout the state. So our total dollar difference year over year in terms of what we received in 23-24 to what we're going to receive in 24-25 is $620,000 increase. So roughly 8.6%. And then additionally, just to take it one step further, I wanted to give the finance committee an idea of what we budgeted compared to what we are actually going to receive. And you can see by that third block of information that we budgeted $7.2 and we are going to $7.2 million and we're going to receive $7.8 million. So roughly $620,000 over budget. Now, how does this come into play when we talk about our budget? If the finance committee recalls, we allocated $400,000 of money that we would spend out of our own bank account, out of our own coffers to help offset some of our expenditures. So that's going to get eaten up with the $627,000. The other $227,000, we may need that for other special education expenditures, things that come up as we make our way through the year. But these will be numbers that, we'll look to expect going forward. And then just to give the finance committee a little bit more background information, you can see on the supplemental 5 pages, where did Colonial stand in terms of other school districts for each one of those each one of those funding sources. First one's basic education, next one's special education, the cyber charter school, and then the adequacy and equity tax supplement. Maybe take a look at that last one. You can see that some of the bigger winners were Pottstown and Norristown. Again, just because of the difficulties, they have with their tax bases. But most Montgomery County school districts did not receive any additional supplemental funds. So I just thought that this would be some food for thought. Okay. All right. So if there's no other questions on that, and again, if you have any questions, you can email me, call, text. The last one is very quickly. We're currently going through the course of closing out the fiscal 23-24 year. We have our auditors coming in a couple weeks where they'll do their internal control testing. They'll go through our procedures and policies. And then in September, they'll go through the actual books and take a look and see where we landed. However, I like to get ahead of the game and wanted to put this together. This is a little quick snapshot. It is not meant to be comprehensive. It is not meant to be detailed. That will come later down in the month of either September, October, once we have the audit. But you can see our fund balance beginning of the year. Now, this includes everything. Our capital reserve money, our capital projects money, the money we have accounted for with our CES renovations. Our total beginning money or beginning fund balance is about $52,800,000. The next column is fiscal results. Fiscal results basically says, did we have a net income or did we have a net loss from operations? How do we do operationally? You can see our capital reserve. We spent $2.5 million. This is in connection with our generator project, our science wing chillers at PW, and some of the other projects identified by Mr. Lally and his team. The capital projects fund, which consists of the remaining balances of the CMS money here, as well as the new CES construction. We had inflows of about $16.3 million in terms of a net income. And then from just the general fund, from operationally alone, we had a net income or surplus of about $1.7 million. Now that is before any of our audit adjustments. That's before we, continue to wrap up everything. But you can see that operationally, the unassigned general fund was in a surplus of 1.7. Take it one step further. If the board recalls or the finance committee recalls, we moved money around this year. We took money out of our general fund and we put it in the CES project because we did not want to incur any more debt. That we didn't want to build those more additional millage points into our budget, which would then affect our additional tax rate. So we did not want to take on more debt, and we moved money from, you can see the unassigned line, up to our capital projects. Additionally, we took $6 million out of the committed balance, which was our COVID money. And we put $3 million in our capital reserve, and we put $3 million in our assigned balance. Long story short, our total change for the year, net income across the boards of all of our funds, was north of $15 million. Again, we brought in $15 million through that new bond issuance, and then we basically broke even with another $500,000 in capital in general fund and capital reserve projects. Beginning of the year, $52 million fund balance. End of the year, $68 million fund balance. Now that